All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday morning, March the 26th, 2024. I don't know why. Sometimes it just hits me that, like, I'm looking at the number here, 2024. And does it ever occur to you how far in the future we are? Like, there would have been a time that I looked at 2024 and would have been like, that's the future. But then I'm coming up on 49 years old, and this seemed like a much further way away than it has turned out to be. Well, happy March the 26th, 2024. A couple things before we get started today. Thursday and Friday, there won't be any Daily Manna Thursday and Friday because I will be traveling Thursday and Friday. So there won't be any Daily Manna Thursday and Friday. So we'll have Daily Manna today, tomorrow, nothing Thursday, Friday, and then, of course, Shabbat service on Saturday will be as usual. So today we are continuing in Revelation. On Friday last week, we did a flyover, as it were, of Revelation 13, of the whole chapter. So today we're going to back up and we're going to begin our way through it more closely. The title of today's Daily Manna is The Worship of Power. We're looking at the beast that arises out of the sea in Revelation 13. And so I'm hoping that we'll go through verses 1 through 4 today. But my notes are such that I wonder if I'm going to make it even halfway. If we get to around a half an hour and I'm not halfway through, then we may put it on pause and then continue tomorrow for the rest of it. We'll see how it goes. So the worship of power, looking at the beast out of the sea, Revelation 13, verses 1 through 4. Backing up to Revelation 12, verse 17 says, So the dragon became enraged at the woman, being Israel, and went off to make war with the rest of her offspring, those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Yeshua. And he stood on the shore of the sea. So as we come into chapter 13, there's the two main sections of this chapter are clearly set off by the phrase, and I saw. And so we have that in chapter 13, verse 1, and then in verse 11. And we have the parallel. And I saw a beast coming up out of the sea in verse 1, and I saw a beast coming up from the earth or the land in verse 11. And so in recounting sort of as John is looking and describing to us the character and the activity of the beast from the sea and of the beast from the earth, in both cases, what you see is how they work together under Satan's authority to persecute God's people and to deceive and to dominate the world. Beginning in verse 1 of chapter 13. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea that had 10 horns and 7 heads. On his horns were 10 royal crowns, and upon his heads were slanderous names or blasphemous names. So back in chapter 11, verse 7, was the first time we see a beast. John had seen a beast rising from the abyss, making war on the two witnesses and overcoming them. Revelation 11:7. When they finish their testimony, speaking of the two witnesses, the beast that rises from the abyss will make war on them and overcome them and kill them. And so here we see the persecution of the two witnesses, the persecution of God's people, the totality of that kind of persecution. And it's all just lumped together in this phrase. They make war on them, overcome them, and kill them. Boom. One sentence, like it's done, right? I know I've said this multiple times, but for anyone that may be with us newly, I want to point out how sometimes in Scripture, what will happen is there are times where you'll say something, the Scripture will say something, and it's simply a summary statement. It's not giving a lot of detail. It's a summary of what happened. And that's what we have here. We have a summary statement. The beast from the abyss will make war on them, overcome them, and kill them. In the same way that in the first chapter of Genesis, when it talks about the creation of humanity, It says in Genesis 1:26 and 27, which we don't have on the screen today, but it says, "In God made man, said, let us make man in our image, male and female, or in our likeness," it says, "male and female, he made them." Right? So you get this idea that man and woman were both fully seen as man and woman, right at the beginning, at the same time. That's a summary statement. And then you get into chapter 2, and now that summary is kind of expanded, so we now get details. That first God made the man, and then he said it's not good that man should be alone. And then he put him into a deep sleep. And he takes a rib, and from that rib crafts or builds the woman. And so now this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Now we see this in this summary expanded in greater detail. So here we have this summary statement. The beast that rises from the abyss will make war on the two witnesses and overcome them and kill them, right? And so here now in chapter 13, we get expanded detail of what that war looks like, of what that overcoming looks like, of how this works. We get this parallel telling the same occurrence but with more detail. Again, the beast from the abyss of Revelation 11 is that beast is Satan. In Revelation 9:11, it was talking about the locusts in the sounding of the fifth trumpet, the angel that had fallen, had unlocked the abyss, and out come these locusts. It says, they have as king over them the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he has the name Apollyon. Both of those words mean destroyer. He is the destroyer. The beast from the abyss is the dragon. And verse 9 of Revelation 12 says, and the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. So here in chapter 13, we see in expanded details ways in which the beast from the abyss makes war on the two witnesses, right? And the first thing he does so via this seven-headed beast, right? He stood on the sea of the shore. Here's the dragon on the sea of the shore, and he sees this out rising from the sea, a seven-headed beast with 10 horns and 10 crowns. And then we see it expanded there's the beast that has 2 horns in verse 11, who is like a lamb, but he's got 2 horns, and who speaks like a dragon. So the beast that we see here in verse 1 is reminiscent of what we see in Daniel chapter 7. Let's look at Daniel 7 verses 2 through 8. Daniel said, I kept watching in my vision at night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were churning up the great sea. 4 huge beasts came up from the sea, each different from the others. Verse 4, the first was like a lion with eagle's wings. As I watched, its wings were pulled off, and it was lifted off the ground. It was made to stand upon 2 feet like a man, and the heart of a human was given to it. And then we've talked about this when you go through chapter 7. I'm not going to dig deep into this. But we have talked about this before, that's Babylon. It's explained later in Daniel chapter 7, and that is an image even of Nebuchadnezzar. But let's continue. And there, behold, verse 5, there before me was another beast, a second one, like a bear, in the image of, or the likeness of a bear. It raised itself up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, arise, devour much flesh. After that I looked, and behold, there was another one, like a leopard. On its back it had 4 wings, like those of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. Verse 7, after this, in my vision at night, I kept watching, and behold, there was a 4th beast, terrifying, frightening, tremendously strong, with large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed anything that was left. It trampled with its feet, It was different from all the beasts that came before it. It had 10 horns. While I was pondering the horns or contemplating, looking for insight into the horns, behold, another horn, a small one, sprang up between them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted from before it. And behold, this horn had eyes resembling human eyes, and a mouth speaking boastfully. So Daniel's, what we see in the book of Daniel, these 4 beasts. One is a winged lion that becomes somewhat human. The wings are taken off. Then there's a devouring bear, a winged leopard, and then finally a 10-horned beast that's different, that's fiercer than all of its predecessors. And then this is all of this together immediately preceding in Daniel chapter 7 the coming of the Son of Man before the Ancient of Days and so forth. So the dominant, it says that the dominant ruler of the final beast will persecute the Kedoshim, will persecute the people of God for times, and half a time. Well, so here in Revelation 13:1, that we see these parallels. Now remember, we had the dragon in chapter 12, and like the dragon, this beast coming out of the sea has 10 horns and 7 heads. Again, 10, the number 10 points to human strength, human government, human systems. This is the power of what I can do with my 10 fingers, with my power, and so and then the 7 horns. 7 speaks to a totality, a completeness, and so this is indicating extraordinary strength, extraordinary power, complete and absolute rule. And then this beast here is described as having a blasphemous name upon his head, a slanderous name upon his head. Now, the word blasphemy, it's a 2-part word from the word blapto, meaning to do damage or mislead, and then phemi is to say. So to say that which is damaging, to say that which is misleading. Hence the translation slanderous. It's language that defames or damages someone else's reputation. So the name, so this beast, this powerful beast, 10 it's slightly different from the dragon, because the dragon had 7 horns. This one has 10 horns, so it's, or 10 crowns, excuse me. So it's 7 heads, 10 horns, 10 crowns. And the names on the beast somehow is defamation, is defaming, damaging the reputation, the identity of the glory of God, of the glory of God's name, of his reputation. You'll remember back when we looked at the letters to the 7 congregations, the congregation in Smyrna, and also the congregation in Philadelphia, dealt with, well, in particularly the one at Smyrna, it talked about that there's the blasphemy, the slander of those who say that they're Jews, but they're not, but they are a synagogue of Satan. Right? And so so what you have is that which is, they're coming in the name of what it is to be Jewish, but they're operating with a different kind of rule. They're not operating with the character of God. They're not operating in that way. And so we have that imagery here, that which does damage to the reputation of God. So when someone comes in, they say, in the case of to the congregation of Smyrna, that say that we're Jewish, the idea there would we stand for the things of God, and yet and all that entails, and yet when we operate in a way that is different from what God has called us to, and then people associate God with our behavior, right? That's what it is to lift up his name in emptiness, to lift up his name in vain. It's slandering the name of God. People say, oh, this is who God is, based on when we lift up his name. We say, hey, yeah, I've given the example about how if I let's say I say this is a special, this is a special sauce, a spaghetti sauce or pasta sauce. And this is, this is Olive Garden's pasta sauce. I'm not a big fan of Olive Garden pasta, but let's say it's amazing Olive Garden sauce. And but I've decided to throw in my own ingredients into that sauce, and I throw in sardines and peanut butter and pickles and mustard, and that's just horrendous, right? That's just awful. But because you're polite and I put this sauce over your pasta, you may eat it, but you've tasted that. And if someone says, "Hey, let's go to Olive Garden," and you think that's the sauce from Olive Garden, then they're gonna go, "No, I've had Olive Garden sauce, and I'd rather not." Right? They haven't had the real deal. They've had a counterfeit of the real deal. I've thrown all my own junk into it and called it Olive Garden. Well, in the same way, when we throw all our junk into the label of what it is to be children of God and into what it is to be his kingdom, walk in his kingdom, we do defamation to his reputation. Because when then people encounter his reputation, you talk about Yeshua, and they go, well, if that's who Yeshua is, no thanks, I've tasted that. They haven't tasted that. They've tasted a counterfeit. So here you have something within this beast. There's this what we'll see here is this whole thing is a counterfeit. We have the beast from the abyss, we have the beast from the sea, we have the beast of the land. Some people call it an unholy trinity. This and one of the beasts is like a lamb. There's a lot of counterfeit going on here. That and everything behind it is the deceiver, is Satan, is that great deceiver who deceives the whole world. And so we see that at work here. That's really this important factor. Later, I want to just give us just a sneak peek ahead in Revelation chapter 17. In 17 and 18, we're dealing with there's this picture of a woman who is identified as Babylon, as that is a basically pictured as a prostitute. So you have these two contrasting. You have the Babylon is the woman of Revelation 17, and then of course in Revelation 12 we have the woman with the stars, which is Israel, and these stand in contrast to one another. And the woman Babylon is upon the beast, and that's the foundation of Babylon and of the system of this world. And we see in Revelation 17, the angel said to me, to John, "Why are you astonished? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and yet is about to rise up from the abyss and head for destruction. The beast that you saw, it was, and it's not, but it's about to be." So something that seemingly is dead, something that seemingly is from the past and is not presently, but is about to be, and it will head for destruction, is what this speaks of, this beast, which is going to make sense as we continue. Those who dwell on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will be awestruck. They're going to be astonished. They're going to be dumbfounded. They're going to be mouths agape when they see the beast, because he was, and he's not, and he is to come. All right, so we're going to see that in this passage. Verse 9, this calls for a mind having wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Oh man, it just hits me. Wow. No. The 7 mountains. So there's this whole thing out there right now. It's such a distortion of the gospel. it's what's it called? I know that the acronym for it is the NAR, and they talk about establishing the seven mountains of the seven mountains, which are the seven areas of power that the church is called to reestablish, and what they're looking is to win the world over by domination, right? And that is not the way of Yeshua. And yet there is this twisted thing coming in the name of Yeshua that is twisting his reputation, and it's seeking to dominate and to crush. And listen, it is, you may have come across it, and at first it sounds so good. It sounds so, yeah, let's do that. But it is not the way of the Lord. And so the seven heads or seven mountains on which the women are seated. Now this actually, we'll get into this more when we get to Revelation 17. I don't mean to get ahead of myself, but it does allude to the seven hills of Rome. But again, it's not about Rome in particular, but it's a prophetic image of the symbol of that kind of power and of the Roman Empire. They are also seven kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain a little while. The beast that was and is not, he himself is the 8th and is one of the 7, and is heading for destruction. Verse 12, the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but receive authority as kings with the beast for 1 hour. So this is for a short time. These kings are of one mind, and they give their power and authority to the beast. They will make war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called chosen and faithful. So what you have here is this system, this beast that rises up, that has power. And it's going to bring, there's a level of awe that is experienced. Yesterday, and that people respond to it. They worship this power. And I titled it today, The Worship of Power. Yesterday, I was talking with my brother-in-law, and we were discussing actually how, because a lot of parallels are made between things that have been seen in the Roman Catholic Church through history. And because so much, particularly within medieval Roman Catholicism, there was so much dominating, crushing. This was men seeking power, not walking the way of Yeshua. But he and I were discussing it. He had gone to Rome a few years back, and he had visited the Vatican in Vatican City. And the thing he was talking about how the garb of the popes became strikingly similar to the garb of the emperors, right? That it was clothing, the clothing that was supposed to be that of spiritual authority and power was the garb of worldly power and authority. And so by the way, this is a spiritual principle that we see at work that the enemy, Satan, perpetually comes with. Like, this isn't limited to Catholic Church at the height of its exercising kind of political authority, crushing and dominating Europe, right? We see this kind of twisting, this blasphemy, this defamation of God's name and reputation in generation after generation. We see it happening now with those who are seeking to exert a crushing, dominating power in the name of Yeshua. And that's not the way he exercised power. John chapter 13 says, Yeshua knew that all power had been given to him, that he had come from God and that he was returning to God. And so what did he do? He got up and he took off his outer garment, and he got down and washed his disciples' feet. So here you have this blasphemous name. And again, it is going to, John's audience, of course, would have made some immediate connections to even what they saw in the empire. They were supposed to say Caesar is Lord. Roman coins in the Eastern Mediterranean that said that the emperor was, used the language son of God, and called the Roman emperor God. Domitian demanded the title Lord and God. Domitian was the one who had John exiled to the island of Patmos. And again, so there is this twisting, this unholy trinity of beasts that are twisting and distorting who God is, and people run after it. I'm going to read verse 2. I'm going to touch on it, and I think there's no way we're going to get through this today, so bear with me. Verse 2, now the beast that I saw was like a leopard, his feet like a bear's, and his mouth like a lion's. You'll notice that those three animals are in inverse order to what we saw in Daniel, right? The first beast that came out when the four beasts were stirred up in Daniel chapter 7, the first one coming out was like a leopard, or was like a lion with wings. So the last one listed here is a lion. The second one was a bear. This one has the second like a bear because it's always in the middle of three. And then leopard was third there and is first here. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. So you have here in this one beast the combined ferocious traits of Daniel's first three beasts and being like a leopard, a bear, and a lion. And with the kind of the destructive and overwhelming strength of the fourth beast, kind of all wrapped up in there. And what John perceives here is that the ruling power represented in the beast's heads and horns comes from Satan himself, the dragon who is warring with the woman's offspring in chapter 12, who's warring against God. That's what's set out in this chapter. The dragon is the one who provided this beast with his power and his throne and great authority. So the connection with Daniel chapter 7 gives us some kind of important things to consider in weighing the identity of, like, who is this beast from the sea. The visions in Daniel use images of a great statue, the statue that we see in Daniel chapter 2 from Nebuchadnezzar's dream, or of savage animals that we read about. And the explanation in Daniel provides very direct correlation to world kingdoms and empires, as well as individual kings and rulers of those empires. So you have Persia, Greece, Babylon, that are pointed out, and so you see these world systems, these empires, these governmental powers that are at work, and so here you have sort of this picture of evil that we see that's used in Revelation, and that points back to the things that we saw in Daniel. And so you can see that there have been, I've talked about it before, where you have how we've talked about the Russian nesting dolls, how with the day of the Lord, you can have it in different, it's the same thing, but you get different iterations of it, different manifestations of this same thing. Well, this spirit of Antichrist, this spirit of anti-Messiah, this spirit of what Psalm 2 talks about, that the kings of the world will want to throw off the rule of God. We see that reiterated throughout history, and that this comes to a full culmination just prior to Messiah's second coming. That the dragon gives his power to the beast not only indicates that the power standing, that this is a powerful, but it indicates that the power standing behind the beast is that of the dragon. So the dragon is giving power to the beast to counterfeit the activity of God and his Messiah. Right? This is all he's saying. Oh, yeah. So the dragon gives the throne to the beast, right? Well, everything else up to this point that we've read about the throne is the throne of God. When you read about the throne, up till now in Revelation, the throne has to do with God and the Lamb and his followers, right? In Revelation 3, it says, to the one who overcomes, he will sit on the throne, just as Yeshua has overcome and sits on the Father's throne. And we actually see the 24 elders on their thrones. And so in the same way, the dragon is giving the beast authority. He's trying to say, well, I can do this too. This is the real kingdom. It's all a counterfeit. And what you see is the worship of power. That's what we'll begin to see in verses 3 and 4. I don't mean to stop just after verse 2, but I do have to stop just after verse 2 because we're beyond 30 minutes right now, and it will take us another 30 to get through the rest. So hang on, and we'll continue in this tomorrow. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.